there's all these stories about, guys over in Macedonia who are running these fake news sites.
Number 24 is Content Farms in Macedonia.
Бидејќи ако се направи грешка, таа ќе биде кобна. Нема враќање назад.
So Europe need to remain more sexy lady in the world. Ajde, majkata!
Господа ја чува Македонија и низините граѓани.
For about 48 hours, and in the words of VMRO Diplomatic leader Cvetin Mijalkov, Macedonia was a circus, but the price of the tickets paid by Macedonians is just too high, he said. It's an apt metaphor. Sasho Mijalkov, the eminence grise, I hope I said that right in the French, of Macedonia and former chief of the secret police, quote, escaped, unquote, as authorities were about to order his arrest on Sunday. A scandal erupted. Zoran Zaev, the putative prime minister, blamed no one. Stevo Pendarovsky, Macedonia's president, expressed his displeasure, pointing to Macedonia's already dismal ranking on corruption, and general confusion, mayhem, and hilarity ensued. And then on Tuesday, Mijalkov casually turned himself in, claiming that he had COVID-19 symptoms and had no idea what the brouhaha was all about. Meanwhile, the small LDP party announced that it is withdrawing its 2 members from the government coalition in parliament, but will continue for the time being to support Zaev and his government, which, together with all other coalition partners, have just 62 members in the 120-seat unicameral legislature, meaning that it is practically a house of cards. Several other coalition partners have expressed unease with many of the government's positions. We'll discuss all of this and more on this episode of the Macedonian Content Farmers Podcast. I'm Jason Miko, coming to you from the foot of the Catalina Mountains in Oro Valley, Arizona.
And this is Cvetin Shalimanov calling in from Skopje, the Banana Republic of Macedonia.
I don't know why I had such a hard time getting through that monologue, Svet, but that's part of the brilliance of podcasts, is that they're a bit rough around the edges. And I am on my second cup of coffee.
Everything is falling apart at the seams or the edges here, so you.
The center, yes, it's Yates. The second coming. The center cannot hold. Anyway, this is what's that?
Yeah, we're really over the horizon here.
Yeah, this is episode 103 of the Macedonian Content Farmers Podcast. We're recording this. We meant to record this on Tuesday of this week after Mijalkov turned himself in. Now we're recording on Thursday. This will drop tomorrow morning, probably Friday. We decided
to wait a little longer so maybe he escapes again.
Exactly, yeah. So this will drop on Friday, but that's the day he's going to be sentenced. So we might have to come back and do another podcast right away. But in the meantime, I think we've got a lot to talk about here with the Banana Republic, or as Cvetin Mijalkov said, the circus that is Macedonia these days. And it's just kind of, even by, my own standards of having watched and been involved in Macedonia now for 25 years and seen, and lived what's going on there, this one kind of really takes the cake, so to speak. And everybody is laughing at the government of Zoran Zaev, including the colorful opposition, the colorful revolutionaries. Sorry, the opposition. I can imagine. I'd love to know what the foreign diplomats are saying behind closed doors. But let's break this down. So again, Sasho Mijalkov, the eminence grise, gray eminence in English, of Macedonia, former secret police chief, and has been working with Zoran Zaev, cousin of Nikola Gruevski, the former prime minister. Just a really bad dude, I think, trying to split VMRO, etc. Supposed to be sentenced this week, going to be sentenced tomorrow, and he escaped, I'm using air quotes, for 48 hours. Yeah. Bring us up to date on that?
Yeah, he's about to be sentenced in the wiretapping scandal, which is the biggest, most important case of the 2015 Colored Revolution protest. So Mijalkov was accused of abusing the UBK secret police service, which is the biggest secret service we have, the heir to the communist police, to the communist UDBA, and very lightly reformed, unfortunately, and the cause of many of our problems in the country. So Mijalkov was nominally running it, but in reality there were leftover elements from 50 years of having a communist police service in the country, who were wiretapping Mijalkov claims without his knowledge. Who knows, honestly. And so this was the big scandal. This was what all the diplomats here, all the foreign press were talking about, that the Gruevski-Mijalkov regime were wiretapping the poor civil society, the poor opposition like Zaev, the poor journalists and businessmen, and they were so horrible. But the tapes somehow ended up with Zoran Zaev, who was leaking them selectively and in edited fashion in 2015. And somehow it turned out that all the tapes were recordings of Gruevski or Mijalkov or the Interior Minister Yankulovska or Vomero people in principle. So, the story was that Mijalkov was so stupid, he ordered the technicians to wiretap themselves. He wiretapped himself, he wiretapped his cousin, the prime minister, and everybody else. And then he gave the tapes to Zaev, or, left it in the hands of these rough, really cynical, horrible communist-era leftover Secret Service people who were so shocked by Mijalkov's wiretapping that they had no choice but to bring the tapes to Zaev to save the country from the abuses. I mean, this was the official narrative, that these grizzled intelligence people were shocked by what was going on, and they went to Zaev to save the country. This is what the diplomats were selling us and telling us here. And, we all laughed, most of us laughed since the start of the story, but okay. In reality, very likely that the wiretapping was done outside of the country, at least much of it. And then the diplomats here gave the green light to Zaev to use them to bring down Gruevski, change the name of the country, and bring us into NATO. So Mijalkov faces sentencing. As you said in the monologue, or before or after that, he was very useful to Zaev since 2017. So he provided the 9 Vomero votes to change the name of the country. At least half of them were directly, had their arms twisted by Mijalkov. The rest were pressured by Zaev and Mijalkov together. And after the name was changed, so he did, he was allegedly in many businesses with Zaev's brother, Vica Zaev. And he started using his remaining connections in Vomero. He was expelled from Vomero after helping Zaev change the name of the country. But he started using his remaining connections in the party. These are mainly former mayors. So, this fits in the narrative of him having numerous businesses across the country, many of them real estate development. So it's notable that former mayors who had a lot of construction, like Aerodrome, where I live in Skopje, which is a huge construction zone. The former mayor of Aerodrome is now one of the main confidants of Mijalkov, and they're trying to create a faction in Vomero, and they're attacking Mickovski, the current leader of the party, and they're accusing him of not being tough enough on Zaev, which is ridiculous because this group helped Zaev get the votes for the name change. So now they're attacking Mickovski from the right. And it works. With some people it works, with what Rush Limbaugh called low information voters. It's, it's a good
Praise be
enough
upon
spin.
him.
Yeah. And with some people it works. It's estimated that he can steal like 20,000 votes from the party and some officials. He's been a nuisance for the new leadership of Vomero, not something that could break the party, but Zaev is trying through Mijalkov to weaken the party. And because of these good services, business ties, weakening the opposition, providing the votes for the name change, Mijalkov has been spared, even though he's charged in, maybe a dozen cases. Zaev would accuse him of murders, of, the Smilkovska massacre, which is incidentally, tomorrow is Mijalkov's sentencing in a huge protest by the Albanians over the Smilkovska League, the Good Friday massacre.
So basically you're saying stay home.
Yes, exactly. And he has not been charged, even most ludicrously, he's not charged even in the storming of the parliament. Everybody in Vomero is charged with this.
Right.
But you would think if there is a major security operation in the country organized by VMRO, that Mijalkov would be the first person to do this and to know about it. Everybody is charged except for him. So, this all clearly told everybody in the know that there is a deal between Zaev and Mijalkov. And this brings us to Sunday. Apparently, the prosecutors demand 13 years sentence for the wiretapping case. There was rumors before that Mijalkov is negotiating a 3-year sentence or anything up to 5, in which case he can postpone going actually to prison until the appeal. This would buy him like 6 months, maybe more. On appeal, he can overturn it, he can drag it out even more, have more time to flee the country more leisurely. So on Sunday, the prosecutors apparently demanded house arrest for him. And until now, he was free to walk the city, to operate from the Marriott Hotel, which he practically owns, which is the base of operations for him. But as an order for house arrest was given, he was seen in the Marriott until lunchtime, and then he, with this Ivica Konevsky, this mayor of Aerodrome, former guy, and when after lunchtime he disappeared and apparently fled to Serbia, and the whole hell broke loose for 2 days until he returned to Skopje under apparently international pressure.
Incredible. That is just an incredible story. And, of course, it doesn't make sense on many different points. I mean, if he was, sick with COVID, as he said, or thought he had COVID symptoms, which would could be a very high temperature, and then the next day he's waltzing in without a jacket in very cold weather into the police station. That makes no sense. Plus, I heard they already had COVID way back in the fall, so so that doesn't hold up. The police were interrogating everybody around him, including family members, and they didn't know that he was sleeping peacefully in his bedroom or somewhere, in his house, his mansion. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't take much knowledge to realize that this is either a setup or, I mean, it's an orchestrated setup on behalf of the government and Mijalkov or something. But but at the end of the day, it is what we said it was, or what Christian Miskolsky said, a circus. It's a farce. It's a banana republic, as you said, and it just really, blows everything else out of the water that I've seen in quite some time. I'd have to sit back and think about over 25 years if there have been bigger farces. There's been bigger events, but farces. This is that. Now, all of this, of course, has implications for the government of Zoran Zaev, which has been shaky. Well, it's been shaky since the beginning because it was essentially it was illegitimate to begin with, and there wasn't a lot of faith in the government to begin with, or the institutions of the government. But this puts a lot more pressure on the government because Citizen, and I think we'll have to talk next week about the M part of Citizen, since they want they're not registering organizations with the name Macedonia in them anymore. So we'll have to talk about that in the next podcast. So Citizen has a number of other parties, smaller parties in it that are coalition, quote unquote, coalition partners, and BESA, of course, the small ethnic Albanian party. But three of those, LDP, DOM, and DS, provide, let's see, 5 members, I think, of the coalition?
LDP 2, DOM 2, DS 1, 5.
Okay, so 5, yeah. So now...
And BESA 4.
And BESA 4, right. But LDP and DS have said that they are going to withdraw their members from the coalition. They're still going to support the government, but they're going to withdraw from the coalition in parliament.
From the group in parliament. The
group in parliament, right, yeah. So, and again, there's 120 seats in the unicameral legislature, so you need 61 to get anything through, aside from, the supermajorities, like changing the Constitution, as we saw. But if the LDP and DS were to vote against the government, obviously it would fall. That's 3. That would bring them down to 59. Yeah. So BESA, of course, is another. So all of this that we just talked about with Mijalkov really we thought, a lot of people thought that if he actually had escaped, left the country, then that would have brought down the government. Now that he has casually waltzed into the police station and turned himself in, quote unquote, we're not so sure about that, but we'll have to see with the sentencing tomorrow. But bottom line is that, the government is increasingly to use a tired old phrase, on thin ice. What else do we know about that situation?
Yeah, this really would have been too much after Gruevski was allowed practically to leave the country in 2019. And he, to his credit, he hasn't made any deals, at least overtly, with Zaev. He did not support the name change. He criticized it. Although he did call the people, he didn't directly call the people. It was his preference. It was clear his preference that we vote against the name change at the referendum, which would have provided the turnout, but he didn't even call for this openly. So, he was very, he just left and washed his hands of the whole thing. But, it's still too much if you have Gruevski flee the country and then Mijalkov. There was a meme because Zaev said that once he's in power, that he's going to start seizing money from people like Mijalkov. And he said, I'm going to put like an electronic sign on the Macedonia gate, the triumphant gate he was targeting with paintballs during the protests.
It's on kind of off the Plostad there in Skopje.
Yeah. He said, I'm going to put an electronic scoreboard and it's going to say how much money I confiscated so far from the criminals of the Gruevski-Mijalkov regime. And of course he didn't do this because, either the oligarchs work for him now or they're being extorted out of their money, but not into the state coffers, but directly into Zaev's coffers, like we saw with Katica Janova, his prosecutor in the racket scandal. So there was a meme with an electronic sign on the gate saying the cousins, Gruevski and Mijalkov, 2, Zaev 0. And, both of them fled. So this really would have been too much. And smaller coalition partners began to express their outrage. And these are people who were part of Gruevski's coalition for a while. So Pavle Trajanov, the former interior minister, former police chief, etc. Lila Popovska, who is this environmentalist party, but she's the adopted daughter of Blaže Ristevski, the old-time, very important historian and Macedonian, one of the patriotic, luminaries of more recently. And so, for Lila, it's a big deal, big problem to be in a coalition with Zaev, as Zaev is giving away on basic tenets of Macedonian patriotism. She's not in parliament herself. She was too unpalatable for SDSM, but 2 members from her party are in. To what extent she can get them to leave, to vote against Zaev is not clear, but they're talking about leaving the group of the party group. Trajanov recovered. LDP, they have 2 seats in parliament and 1 seat in the government. They have always been. They once were like a proper party, like a serious party, and they still suffer from this complex that if they're a coalition partner, a minor partner, they at least need to have some influence on decision making. So Besar, for the Albanian party, they started protesting Mijalkov's escape immediately. There are 2 members of parliament from DUI who are openly hostile to the DUI party in general. So this all brings us to 11 people. And the opposition does not need all of them to turn against Zaev. Just maybe half of them would be more than enough. And they're all now looking, if they see that Zaev gets himself into a really untenable situation, like the escape of Mijalkov would have been, at the same time they're conducting negotiations with VMRO. What would VMRO offer them in exchange if they leave the coalition? So, for example, in the case of Besa, it's obvious it could join the other Albanian parties, the Alliance and Alternative. And they could split the huge spoils of the government which are given to DUI if they can form a coalition with VMRO without DUI. That means like hundreds of public sector jobs, procurement contracts, serious government departments. It's more than enough for all the Albanian parties to divide between themselves. As I said, they were in coalition with VMRO for a very long time, and they were key in bringing Gruevski down. When they sensed, and the international started putting pressure on Gruevski, they were the first to leave the coalition, and now they could play the same role in the case of Zaev, while leveraging the situation to their financial benefit, maximum benefit. So he's really on thin ice, but and it looked very dire for Zaev on Tuesday, especially as he's coming out of a courthouse, one of the trials against VMRO people. He's like a witness or something, and the press was openly hostile to him on Monday. They said okay, you're not resigning, nobody's resigning, for real. The prosecutor Ruskovska was out, and they were asking her, "Can you explain what's happening?" And she said, "Well, I explain, but can you explain what's happening so that it makes sense, so that it's logical?" And she says, "I said, do you want me to repeat what I said?" And the press is laughing "Okay, this is a joke." Oliver Spasovski comes out, the interior minister, right. So everybody focused okay, if we can bring Zaev down, give this sacrifice, have Spasovski resign for losing both cousins. And he holds a press conference on Tuesday, and he refuses to resign. And at that moment, it looked like Zaev is finished. The U.S. ambassador was with Shekerinska in Krivolak, this army shooting range, and she looked livid. Through the mask, you could sense that she's about to boil over. But at this time, apparently, the negotiations with Mijalkov, who allegedly had fled to Serbia through a business partner of his and was sitting there pretty and discussing with Zaev. And we'll know the content of these discussions tomorrow when the sentence comes. Will it be 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? Anything under 5 years indicates a deal between Mijalkov and Zaev. Even the fact that even now he's not in detention, he's not in prison. He's again in house arrest, which is unheard of, to give house arrest to a person who fled the country, who fled a house arrest order. I mean, that's unheard of.
Now, and his passport was taken, correct? But apparently he has a Czech passport as well.
Come on. Yeah, he has a Czech passport. His father, Zoran Mijalkov, who is Macedonia's first interior minister.
Right.
We need to cover this. He's part of the lore, of the family lore for Gruevski as well. I mean, much of Gruevski's claim to power in VMRO was due to Zoran Mijalkov, his uncle, because Zoran Mijalkov was like a trade representative. These were very powerful people in Yugoslav times to the Czech Republic. For textile and so these people were, these are the first people who made serious money in the country, like Trifun Kostovsky and the rest. So the Mijalkovs, they did some business privately in the Czech Republic, but when he returned, he became most notable not by business acumen. He became best known for he was a strong supporter of independence of Macedonia, while all the other communist era apparatchiks were so scared of the idea, were petrified of saying, openly advocating this. He was named interior minister in an expert government, the first government we formed through Nikola Klyusev, but not nominated by VMRO. It was an expert government, but it was clear that, half of them were socialists, half of them were VMRO, of the ministers, and he died in late 1991 in a car crash as he was driving from Skopje to Belgrade on official business, like the interior minister going to visit what is still our capital. We're seceding from the capital, alone, with no escort, nobody in the car with him. This is the official version. And he flies off the road and hits himself, the chest on the wheel, on the steering wheel, but he's apparently still walking around. People see him. Then he's found dead. Completely, mucked up story. Nobody believes this. And this, he's considered it's widely considered that he was killed because he was an open Macedonian patriot and pro-independence person, while at a time when it was very dangerous to have this position.
Right.
So, in tremendously important family, and unfortunately, both Jordan and Nikola Gruevski, unfortunately, Sasho Mijalkov is now really putting a huge dent in the family resume.
It's almost like the Kennedys.
Yeah.
Oh.
For
wow.
better and worse.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. So, wow. Well, that's an awful lot of history there, Cvetin. It's a good recap for a lot of our listeners that don't know that. What it points to is just this continuing. As I was thinking here, as you were talking about, perhaps the government falling and these smaller parties then joining with Vumro, maybe some of the Albanian parties, and talking about the spoils, which is all true, of course. But it's unfortunate because this is a conservative podcast in English, but first and foremost we're conservatives, and we think about things like small government, limited government, rule of law, private property rights, free speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of religion. But again, going back to that first one I just said, small limited government, which is really a hallmark of conservative thinking. Not that my party here has been very good on that in the past 4 years, actually the past 20 years, I should say. Spending in a pandemic or a war is understandable, and you expect government to do big things in times like that. But then, when those crises pass, you want the government to become small again and just do what the basic functions of what the government's supposed to do. And again, as you were talking, I was thinking, man, when was the last time Macedonia had a government that really focused on, just doing a few things really, really well, that it's competent, that it's charged with doing, and then allowing individuals and businesses to use their God-given talents and skills to make life better for them and their families and the country, and all of this, which allows for the proper flourishing of society. And obviously Macedonia is not alone in this. All governments struggle with this. All people, all societies struggle with this. But I think back to 2006 when Vumro took power for the first time, and they were really, really gung ho about increasing the size of the economy, bringing in foreign direct investment, getting rid of regulations, doing things that allow for these things that I've just been talking about here. Maybe not necessarily really small government, as small as we would like, or as small as Grover Norquist would like, which is very few people listening to this will get that reference, but you will. And I just think, gosh, who benefits and who gains in all this? I forgot the Latin for who benefits. But anyway, who benefits is, the political parties and their people that support them and their patrons, and who loses is the Macedonian people. And I think that's really kind of unfortunate. It is unfortunate. It's not kind of unfortunate. It is unfortunate. And that's what we should be encouraging, Vumro, especially as the center-right party, to really focus on and get back to and be talking about. But it almost seems hopeless right now. But but there's always hope.
Well, at least we're developing a very healthy and very strong skepticism of anything the government does and says, especially in the past several years.
No, it's not skepticism; it's cynicism.
Yeah. Yeah, even there are people, it was ridiculous. It was complete meltdown. Even in people who work for the government, they couldn't try to defend what's happening. It was like, oh, come on, we are not going to have to swallow this whole thing. And even when he returned, when Mijalkov returned in this this really comedic fashion, like a journalist from a pro-government TV station tipped off to wait in front of the office of the prosecutor Ruskovska, and there comes Mijalkov looking better than he actually did in a long time, like pepping his step, like, hey, anybody missed me? And the journalist asks him, Mr. Mijalkov, you're in Macedonia? Like, not asking, like, noting.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, Jesus.
Господин Миjalkov, добър ден. По Македония сте?
Да, тук съм.
Так, гледам така. Овде во Скопје бевте во бегство или?
Не.
And Zaev tried to make this look like, okay, we pressured his family, we twisted his children, his brother, his businesses, and this didn't go off well. I mean, people were noting, even for Mijalkov, people were noting, listen, you're not supposed to have a government this big and this serious to be able to go after the children of somebody who, they're obviously in cahoots with, and they're letting him flee, and then suddenly, the U.S. embassy or somebody else pressures them to reverse course, to do a 180. I tried even, everybody's laughing about the fact that he fled and how incompetent the government was looking, but I actually went to Twitter, and it was enormously unpopular, given who Mijalkov is, given how he practiced power in several cases, nothing as crazy as this, but still, the arrest of Lyuba Bushkovsky over a million things, but, there was extra cruelty, if you will. He was kept kneeling in a parking lot for several hours with cameras on. But I said, okay, listen, but the actual case for which he's sentenced is bullshit. Just like the case for which Gruevski had to flee the country. Mijalkov did not order the wiretapping at this extent, of himself at least. Right. I mean, at least the wiretaps which are being admitted as evidence of himself, of Gruevski, makes no logic, makes no sense that he would shoot himself in the foot like this and leave it lying around to have it taken by, rogue, opposition-minded intelligence officers and given to the SDSM party and then used by SDSM and the U.S. Embassy to bring down Gruevski. I mean, this case, it's ridiculous.
And I think it's important that we mention, because it's gotten lost over the years, is that going back to the so-called colorful revolutionaries and the illegal wiretaps that you mentioned and how all of that was used to bring down the previous government. Again, number one, they were illegal wiretaps. According to Macedonian law, it's illegal to do that. Number two, they were then used as evidence, which is not admissible in a court, according to Macedonian law, again. And yet, all these two major important facts have been overlooked in all of this, is that you got illegal wiretaps, they're illegal, and then they're used as evidence in court. And that should not be admissible, and yet, everybody has gone along with it, including, certainly the government, but the post-Western embassies, if I may call them that, certainly went along with it all as well, because it suited their purposes, which of course was all about changing the name and much else about Macedonia, about the name and the identity and everything else. As a quick aside, I look at the news every morning about Macedonia, and I couldn't help but notice this article about winemaking in Macedonia, which is an excellent article, but it starts off, the subheading is, North Macedonia has only officially been on the map since 2019. But wine has been made in the region for 4,000 years. That second sentence is true. But, it makes the casual reader, North Macedonia has only officially been on the map since 2019. The casual reader thinks, new country, new people, new history, new everything. And none of that is true. But again, the article is excellent. But that is a result of what the post-Western embassies and the government of Macedonia and others said would be fine. Just a little name change here. It's infinitely more than that, and it has repercussions that last forever. And again, but all that we've been talking about, all of this circus, the wiretaps, the court cases, all of this stuff has to do ultimately with the name, which is I guess odd when you think about it on the one hand, but if this had never been an issue, would we be even having this conversation right now? I don't know. Maybe it's a moot point. But all right. Well, there's a number of other things we wanted to talk about on this podcast, but I think we're going to have to set those aside for next time. Like Manu, Bulgaria. We haven't even touched on Bulgaria yet, although I did notice that the foreign minister made a beeline to Sofia yesterday or the day before to talk to his counterpart over there.
Yep.
We'll save all that for the next podcast, including the result of the sentencing tomorrow. But I think we should take a moment and just talk about the fact that we have a new platform for the Macedonian Content Farmers Podcast, Substack, which is, I don't know what to call it other than a platform, I guess. But
like a blogging site.
Blogging site. There we go. Yeah. So they've attracted a number of media outlets and independent journalists and others that have gone over to it. It's very user friendly, easy to use. We've been migrating the podcasts that we've done over there. They'll still be on YouTube and Rumble. We'll still post there because I know we got a lot of subscribers, especially on YouTube. But we want to encourage people to sign up on Substack, and we'll be promoting that site as well, so that you get notifications when the podcasts come out. There's other things that we might be doing, including some editorials and newsletters, and it sounds like we're building a media empire here. And then, of course, merch at some point. But what else? You want to add anything about Substack there?
Yeah, it looks like, I mean, we've been really slacking off with putting together a proper website, and this sort of looks like a website. For us, you can have all the podcasts there. It's not a podcast first platform. Actually, their podcasting section is in beta, in development still, but it's a nice way to use, to share our thoughts, maybe not only in audio format, but also in writing and in animation and song and dance, performative dance, and spoken word. What was that? What they did at the inauguration in the U.S.
Oh, yes, right. Yes.
So,
the poetry?
Yeah. Whatever that was.
Yeah.
I mean, we can definitely, we needed like a website, and we're running away from YouTube. If you can run away from big tech in this world.
But we'll still post. We'll still put because we have the subscribers.
Yeah, sure.
So, yeah.
Yeah. But Rumble has been an okay substitute for now, I think, and for people who prefer something easier on the go, Substack is I think still more phone friendly, and it's only the audio file, not the video file. Right. So I guess a little less bandwidth, a little less buffering goes into listening to the podcast. So yeah, we're still poking around, and as is everybody. I mean, everybody is running away from one platform to another with what's happening. People being silenced and shut down left and right. So
no, just right, not left.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So you can't have all your eggs in the same basket.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and as you said, because I know we've had a number of folks have reached out to us on Twitter, on the Twitters and other social media sites to say they want to be able to listen to the podcast while they're walking, jogging at the gym, driving, whatever. And I think Substack will be more suitable for that. As you mentioned, that they're still in the beta. I don't even know what you call it. Beta format.
Still no app and still no audio download, but the audio is there. Most of the episodes are already up. They'll be up by tomorrow. I think we'll have all of them up.
Yep.
So yeah, it's a good old-fashioned blogging site which offers other listening, but also other options as well.
Right. Okay. Good. Well, again, we'll be promoting that and posting on Substack going forward. We'll make note of that on various social media channels. Again, still posting on YouTube and Rumble, etc. But I got to get to the office here. It's morning here. Still, it's late afternoon there on the 25th of February. I think we should remember that tomorrow, February 26th, when this podcast will drop, is the anniversary of the death of President Boris Tchaikovsky and 8 of his colleagues, and we want to remember that and honor him and the other Macedonians that perished with him. Kind of a sad day for Macedonia. I remember it well. I was there. But we'll we'll talk more about the ongoing circus in town, which seems to be, the circus is in town and it seems to be staying in town now for a while there in Macedonia. So we'll keep covering it for our listeners and see where it goes.
Yeah, hopefully. I'm not sure if we can top this week, but we'll see what next week brings.
Indeed. All right. Good talking to you, Cvetin.
You too, buddy. Take care.